Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's my pleasure to host this evening's TI STEM Exchange session. My name is Peter McLaren, and what we have tonight is one of several sessions that we put on every month. And the focus of these TI STEM Exchange sessions is to bring together panelists from around the country who work in STEM education in innovative and interesting processes to be able to share that information with you, the participants, whether you're an administrator, whether you're an educator. It's just our pleasure to be able to present this. This is an opportunity for you all to be able to not only listen to what the panelists say, but to share, to exchange ideas, and to learn. And so what we're really looking forward to tonight for is having that opportunity to dialogue with colleagues, learn from panelists, and make a difference in your classroom as you are already doing. I want to remind you all that we are recording this session, and you will be receiving a link to that recording in future emails coming along. And I know that, especially in the current state of COVID, you're all probably very much familiar with the how to use Zoom. But I want to remind you that we want to make sure that your voice is muted, so use the mute function on your screen. And you're also welcome to turn your video on, but might be best to be able to use the speaker view. That way, you're going to be focusing on the person who is sharing on the dialogue at that particular time. So with that, I want to be able to introduce some of our people that we have here. And it's my pleasure to introduce Jolie Honey, who is the Mathematics Equity Specialist at Utah Department of Education. You can all read her bio, but I just want to say she is a ubiquitous presence in mathematics. I've had the occasion to work with Jolie on a number of projects. She is a passionate educator and someone who really, really strives to be able to make math a opportunity for all students to be able to move forward in STEM and in their lives. So welcome, Jolie.
Thank you, Peter. That was very kind. I absolutely love every moment that I get to work with you as well. And I would just like to share that I am honored to be here and to represent the Association of State Supervisors of Mathematics. Just to give everyone a little bit of background, we are an organization made up of state and territory math supervisors, many of whom oversee state standards, adoption, and implementation. ASSM currently has many members who are part of a data science special interest group, as well as we have many members involved with an access and equity group. So this really goes into a lot of the work that we're doing, and I'm very excited to see all of the great conversations that are going to be happening tonight with Todd and Oki. I would like to also share that ASSM has a working definition of why data science is important in mathematics, and letting you all know that we have used resources such as the GAZE 2, that we also have used information from Stanford via UCubed. We also were involved with the University of Chicago Risk Center. And then for those of you who may be familiar with the launch years, and I'm going to go ahead and ask Joni if she'll put a couple of these links just so that if people are interested, that they have access to it. So like, for example, the launch years has created a framework for data science, and you might be interested in that, as well as a modern algebra 2. And then also the Conference Board of Mathematical Sciences, who have led a charge for the math transition years, which includes the work for data science. So the working definition that I'd love to share with everyone, just to kind of get our head around the work that we are doing, is that data science is the process in which teachers provide an environment with tools that are accessible to all students for students to engage in the following practices when grappling to make sense of large data sets. For example, students collect, sort, organize, and formulate questions about the data, understanding that patterns are recognized and explored for meaning. Students consider the data set, and from that data set, they analyze and develop meaning. And with that, they then interpret and communicate stories about the data through modeling and visualizations, excuse me. And then we then want students to feel empowered to utilize their interpretations or predictions to take action, whether that be local action or global action. If you or your organization is working on something related to data science, and I know that there's some math and science and all sorts of STEM people that are here with us this evening. One of the things I would love to see and share is if you have work that you're doing, please enter that information in the chat box, because what we want to do is see what work is being done, what people are doing. And then also I'm going to ask that we all consider how the work that we are doing in our own individual spaces or within our collective spaces connects to the discussion we're having tonight with Oki and Todd. I'm really happy to see people here and to know that there's so much excitement and passion about this work. Peter, I'm going to hand it back to you because we've got lots of great stuff to talk about.
Jolie, thank you very much. And I really appreciate you encouraging dialogue in the chat box to share the work of the participants. I think that's a great point. Thank you. I am really happy to be able to introduce this next person because I consider him not just a colleague, but a good friend. We have worked for a while. His name is Michael Hines. And I like to say he's the hardest working person in New Jersey. He is the state science coordinator for the New Jersey Department of Education, but he's a lone ranger in that role. And not only is he the state science specialist, not only does he oversee the standards and curriculum and what have you in New Jersey, but he's currently the Council of State Science Supervisors president. And as you can see from this particular slide, it doesn't stop there. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike. Mike, it's all yours.
Thank you, Peter. I don't often turn red, but I did with that introduction. Thank you. So I'm thrilled to be here this evening to share this with you, and thank you, TI, for bringing us all together. So as a science educator, I'm really intrigued by what Oki and Todd are going to be talking about this evening for a couple of reasons. The first is that it unapologetically centers equity and justice in its design. It invites every kid into the sense making by centering the learning on something that the students feel is relevant and engaging. It invites every kid to contribute to the conversation and for every kid to feel that their contributions are valued. It invites every kid to leverage their everyday sense-making practices and to connect them to the formal practices of science and mathematics. The other thing that really intrigues me is that it exemplifies the potential of STEM education. That is when the disciplines play nice together. The learning tasks actually enhance the connections between the quantitative reasoning, the data science, data literacy, and an authentic scientific context, COVID. The learning tasks also respect the unique content and practices of both science and mathematics. And the learning tasks leverage meaningful and mutually supportive connections among the quantitative reasoning, data science, data literacy, and science. And the learning tasks are culturally and linguistically appropriate. So I am thrilled to be here. I thank Texas Instruments for bringing us together. And back to you, Peter.
Thanks so much, Mike. I want to make mention to all of you. It would really be helpful for you to keep your chat box open. There's a lot of good stuff being floated in there by participants and obviously sharing some links. But I really appreciate our moderators, Jolie and Mike. But the next two people I'm going to introduce to you, as STEM educators, whether you realize or not, we're actually cognitive scientists. And in order to be a cognitive scientist, you can't just operate on what feels right. You operate on research. And these two people that I'm going to introduce now really have done yeoman's work in providing that research and support STEM educators. Let me introduce Dr. Oki Lee. And Dr. Oki Lee, I have this little thing that I do whenever I talk with Oki. When we greet each other, I do I heart Oki, because not only is she a great researcher, but she has someone that has taught me so much in terms of equity and justice and how to include all kids, especially around the world of language. And what I really value her collegiality, as well as her work with the NGSS writing team, where she led that equity and justice side of that writing. It shows up in just about every single thing she does. And so I heartily welcome Oki to be part of this group. Looking forward to hearing your presentation tonight, Oki. Thank you for being here. Our next presenter is a person that, a fellow New Englander, as you can tell by my accent, parking the car is not a hard thing for Todd Campbell to do, as long as it's a Volkswagen bus, because he is a connoisseur of Volkswagen buses. He's a collector and an aficionado. More importantly, though, in our relationships, is what he does to support STEM educators every single day. He's from the University of Connecticut. His work really involves bringing in pre-service and in-service teachers into a context of how to use student modeling to be able to have students be able to express themselves, to make their thinking visible, and more importantly, how to be able to foster teachers to be able to bring that out in their classrooms. I am really, really pleased to be able to have Todd here along with Oki to be able to do our this particular STEM exchange session. And I don't know about you, but I am really excited. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Oki. Take it away, folks.
Peter, thank you. I reciprocate I heart Peter for many years. I very much appreciate this opportunity, and on the Jeopardy screen, I see some of my old friends. So I would like to say hello, Ellen, with your face smiling. And today's presentation is the outcome of a very extensive collaboration of the team. So I would like to share the many things with the team. So let's get to the work, because we have a busy work to do lying ahead of us. When you see the purpose of the presentation, you see three key terms that we may unpack. One is that we are proposing an instructional framework for justice-centered STEM education. So it is a STEM education, not as a collection of a four, but STEM education as integrated and authentic. But justice-centered is baked in as so essential. That's one component. Another component is it's a pressing societal challenges. So we are engaging students to think about the challenges that face our society currently. And third is that we are going to use the instructional framework for the COVID-19 pandemic. And when Peter was so excited that that instructional framework can apply to other pressing societal challenges like COVID-19 and pollution and all that. So we are using COVID-19 because we give the credit for COVID-19 to disrupt the system, but also giving us roadmap to think about the future that lies ahead of us. Now, instructional framework.
Okay, can I interrupt?
Sure.
Oki's trying to pretend that she's not perfect, but we don't see your slides.
Well, you saw just my face, which is a great introduction. All right, thank you. As if we have not done Zoom meetings long enough and we are still, what? Like that. So instructional framework. Our instructional framework for justice-centered STEM education has three components. One is we are starting from the phenomenon, but the phenomenon this time is societal challenges that affect all of us, locally, but also globally. The second is that when societal challenges are complex, it's not chemistry or physics or biology, but it is leveraging convergence of a multiple STEM subjects including the new kids on the block of data science and computer science and possibly artificial intelligence, to explain such challenging societal phenomena or challenges. And then we are using the convergence of multiple STEM subjects to design solutions that centers on justice, but not only at the individual level, but also at the societal level. So the students are thinking about globally of what it means. This is why we are talking about systemic, in addition to individual. Now we are going to use NSTA tracking COVID-19 playlist, and it'll be available on the chat. All right, let's get ahead then. So those are three components of our framework. The first one is really important about, so what is the phenomenon, or what is the societal challenge that we engage students so that the students are so compelled to figure things out, design solutions, possibly making informed decisions, and take responsible actions. So I would like to think about how this instructional framework is building upon. It's not out of nowhere, but it is a building upon but extending the current science standards. It started from the framework and then it went into the next generation science standards. For those of you who may not be familiar, we call that affectionately the NGSS. And it's NGSS is following the three major instructional shifts. I can put those three instructional shifts in one sentence. So students are figuring out the phenomena and problems by engaging in three-dimensional learning, which involves blending science and instructional practices, cross-cutting concepts, and disciplinary core ideas. And as the students develop science understanding, that science understanding builds over the course of instruction, whether it's a unit or a year or a grade band or K through 12 or beyond. Now I use the science as an entry point as I'm a science educator, but I can think of the same thing in math education. So I would say that students are learning about the core, students engage in mathematical practices to figure out the mathematical core ideas. And then mathematical understanding develops over the course of a unit, year, and K through 12. Grade levels or grade bands. So those are the three science instructional shifts from which we build our instructional framework. Now, when I say contemporary, I mean the framework and the NGSS, by the way, that have been either adopted or made adaptations by 45 states and the District of Columbia. Peter, we have done well. And then Mike, and then Texas coming in, we're really talking about 46 or 47 states out of how many states in the US? 50 states, voluntarily, as a grassroots. So what the contemporary approach is proposing is that I think of a traditional and contemporary. Traditional, think about the way you learn the science. Think about the way you learn the mathematics. Possibly, if you're very lucky, think about the way you learned, let's say, computer science. Traditionally, scientists and teachers, as experts, as well as adults, define what counts as a science. So that is a canonical knowledge of science. And that is typically written in textbooks, and students read science from the written materials. And that canonical science knowledge given by the scientists and science teachers made sense to some students, but science that did not make sense to many students because it has nothing to do with my current lives or future careers. Those of you who are here are maybe some of those, some students who understood and science made sense for you. Now, I would consider them more than three-dimensional learning. The most important shift in the NGSS is that it flipped. So it's not going from traditional scientists and some students. This time, all students are making sense of phenomena and design solutions to problems as a science and engineering, as scientists and engineers do, as students have the agency and they are like scientists and engineers. So that flip to me is the most important. Now, so this is one example of our work at NYU in collaboration with Stanford, with Helen Quinn and other applied linguists. So this time, the phenomenon is that what happens to our garbage as a physical science phenomenon or physical science and science concepts in 5th grade. So this is the way we thought of doing what happens to our garbage. Here is the landfill. Now we cannot go to landfill all the time, or maybe not even once. So we simulate the landfill in a classroom. In the beginning of the school year, students are sorting garbage and we are careful of safety. Now we cannot leave the garbage in the center of the room either because it'll stink. So we'll have to do something, and we affectionately calling landfill bottles. So you see open system, closed system. Now this is what makes me very aware of the current situation of the societal challenges. So we have this societal challenge of garbage in the landfill, which affects the soil, which affects the smell. It affects disproportionately of communities that may not have the opportunities or resources. And there are birds that are vultures. Now, because we cannot do it, because we consider that students may not be able to handle this complex societal challenge, we sanitize the phenomenon in the classroom. So here is a science and we are making sense of. And this is, and students are really engaged and they can apply and they make sense of. But when I think about different ways of what future might hold for us, here's a traditional, students are learning about science, and contemporary, students are making sense of phenomena like a garbage. But what would it be the future like if we put pandemic, climate change, food sustainability, air and pollution, noise pollution that affects around airport, who are the communities? So that thinks another way. So here is a typical example of when we think what we can think of traditional, contemporary, and future. In fact, these are the 3 projects that have occupied me for the past couple of decades. So these are my works. When we did it before the NGSS, Peter, I had a life before the NGSS. Based on the National Science Education Standards of 1996. Here, the goal is that students are learning about science concepts, because scientists and science teachers say these science concepts are important, you are going to be tested. So students are doing this investigation, typically of a vinegar and baking soda, and it's really cool. Wow, the balloon becomes bigger. It's a new substance because of chemical reaction. And students learn about science concept, but if you say, can you apply it to the real world? Students are going to say, because it is science. Now in the contemporary, students are making sense of phenomenon and about the garbage, and there is a smell. Now, students are doing the chemical reaction and vinegar and baking soda, not just to learn the science concept, but because it is a science core idea is important to make sense of the phenomenon of a smell from the garbage. So the purpose is different, that the purpose is learning the content. The purpose is I need to know the core ideas to be able to make sense of. Now, when you put COVID-19 here, or climate change, then what? What would the students do? What would be the students' role of making sense of? Is it just making sense of, or is it something more than making sense of? Maybe take action. Maybe improve the community, maybe becoming responsible citizens. So this is a question that I would like to ask all the participants to think about. So that's the task. Here are the 4 questions that we would like to address to the participants. If we think about the STEM education that addresses the pressing societal challenges, what are the pressing societal challenges that affect our daily lives? I'm looking at Ellen, like for example, the orange sky during the summer. Okay. Climate change of wildfires, that's what I mean. Okay. How do these pressing societal challenges that disproportionately affect minoritized groups? When we say challenging, it's a challenging to some more, or maybe much more than others, because it's challenging to some. Now, for the past this year, since the pandemic, you might have noticed that this is disproportionately affecting, not just the equally affecting, disproportionately affecting is our common phrase, disproportionately affecting. And when I think about the disproportionately affecting, that is mathematics. What do you mean by disproportionately affecting? By ratios and percentage and all of that. So it's a math is baked in, but also justice is baked in when you think about the challenges. Now, the third question is, now that we have these pressing societal challenges where justice is an inherent part and parcel of, and it's so embedded, how do we design solutions to address these pressing societal challenges? And the last question to us as a community, as we have math educators and science educators, and some of you may do the data science and computer science, is what is the role of a STEM education? So we are going to go into, now that we have thought about pressing societal challenges, we are going to use COVID-19 as one example of many that disproportionately affecting minoritized groups. So our instructional framework for justice-centered STEM education to address the pressing societal challenges, that complex societal challenges requires a multiple STEM subjects to address solutions, just like scientists and engineers and STEM disciplinary experts are doing to solve the problem. So we are going to go into data science. All right. Jolie and Mike, thank you for the data literacy and the role of the data. And we are going to build upon the introductions by our colleagues in math education and science education. Here, data science enables a K through student to make sense of pressing societal challenges. Now here, when we say data serve as evidence to understand, wow, these are real societal challenges. And these societal challenges affect the minoritized groups more than others. Now, there are many, many different data sources, but we are going to use only those three data sources simply because they are just very prominent data sources. And I assume that many of you might have heard of Johns Hopkins University data source, but I haven't had a chance to visit because it's very complex. So we are going to unpack the Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center, and then we will interpret the data and make sense of what that data means. Then the second one is our world-in data, which is from the Oxford University. And then the third is a CDC guidance. So those are three data sources that we are going to visit. And from here on, you are going to be very, very busy to do much of the intellectual thinking. So what do? Peter, I think we are really doing well in terms of time, right? So here is a data science. We are starting from the global data because the macro data are inherently related to personal life of me and my family and my community. So this time, the macro and micro of a person and community data are all interrelated. This is actually mind-boggling about when you think about the data. So let's start how you think about the data. This is the data of November 24th, and today is December the 2nd. And Peter, we're talking about what? Change and stability. Just over a period of 1 week, the numbers of cases and death and vaccinations are just incredible. So I'm keeping this as an example of, you can see that I'm getting into the science NGS is a cross-cutting concept because we'll get to how data science is related to science standards. Now here is a very interesting let me see. I just would like to walk you through a little bit so that I can whet your appetite of, I cannot wait to go to the data source. So here we go. Now you can see that there are about 200 nations, and it's being updated just about every couple of hours. That is incredible, from 200 nations. Now, when I look at these numbers, I'm thinking of a math educators, of a pace, the place values. Here's a 250 million, 5 million, and I'm stopping, huh? Todd, you thought it's a trillion? I think it's a 1 billion. I know. And then here are cases, and here are death, and here is what? Here is vaccinations. Now you can see that up and up, cases are going up, deaths are going up, 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 up. Now I would like to show you the by nation. So when you click the US, you will see this as of about a week ago. So we have close to 50 million cases. And it's mind-boggling because in March of last year, I remember seeing 3 million, and I thought that was just, and now here is 773,000. Here is 450. Here's a very interesting in the US context. So you can see cases are going up, deaths are going up, and it happened around the January of 2021. I wonder what happened. Here is a pattern, and when you see a pattern, you can say, what is the explanation for the pattern? What is the correlation between these patterns? And here is a new kid on the block of a vaccination. Ooh, vaccines, and then it went down, and we thought that we are going to go back to normal. Guess what happened? Delta knocked on the door, and then there is a new kid on the block. This is what we see, the patterns. Fascinating, isn't it? I don't mean fascinating. I meant that data is fascinating, but the reality is really sobering and tragic. So here is a US county, and I'll walk you through so that I didn't do anything. I just did a presto, and I did a Wizard of Oz. I clicked it, and it'll take a little bit of time. Let's see, but I'm not going to do that. It'll take a little bit of time. So I am going to go to COVID-19 data source. So this is what we are going to do, and you're going to have to click even then. So here is the world data. Here is a global map, and I'm clicking US. And that's what will give me the US data right here. Now, I would also like to go to US map within the US. And this is what is really mind-boggling when you think about the power of the data. Within the US, you have a state, you have a county. I can do my county here in Manhattan. So just for the sake of time, you can see Los Angeles, the largest, and Maricopa, which is Arizona, Miami-Dade, Cook. All right, so if you do the state right here, I'm going to go to the first one so to save the time. You will see later on, Todd will walk you through and then do the lesson. Here is Alabama, and here is the first county. And this is giving me the county there. It's working very hard. Todd, it's not going.
I think we're trying to show you that when the county comes up, if you click on it, it'll give you an infographic of your county and the most recent 14-day trends.
Well, the data are so big, and I'm using so many different data sources. So I'm going to stop, and here is the mystery that you're going to do when you work with a Todd on a lesson. So we are going to go back again, and Joni, can you help me? So this is what you will be doing. When you visit Johns Hopkins, right here, interpret the global and national data. Do not go to the county data yet, but we'll get to that. Consider how you could use the data for your teaching, whether you are a math educator, science educator, data science, or computer science. So think about how the data relates to you. Then as you work on your data interpreting, and then think about your teaching, enter your thoughts in the chat box. And we would like to ask you to do all those things within 4 minutes. After 4 minutes, we are going to come back. And then any brave soul who is so compelled to share your discovery that I must say this, I would like to invite 1 or 2 people to share your thoughts. So this is 7:35. And would you somebody manipulate the data? The chat. And those things will reappear. Interpret the data, think about your teaching, and you'll share your thoughts. 4 minutes.
As you're looking, I'll just, maybe this is a good time to say, I really like to share this. At one point when Noki and I were presenting, as we were developing these ideas, I went to this map and I went to my county, Bristol County, Massachusetts, and I looked at the data, and then I went to the country of Australia and I looked at the data, and it was almost identical. The number of cases in my county and the number of cases in Australia, and that was well into the pandemic. It was just, it was astounding, I think, to see that.
Yes, and this is Jolie. I'm so excited about reading the comments that I'm sorry, Oki, because the first one that I want to share is from Samantha, who is talking about in her pre-calculus honors class, showing data to students and asking them to interpret the shapes of the model based on functions they've studied this year. And then how this could lead to conversations about weekly case numbers, looking at a sinusoidal curve, which supports the trigonometry unit. And then also she mentioned that which by the way, I'm just going to throw out that I love that Samantha has an integrated math 3 course. I love the integrated and the conversation about being exponential. So how to discuss the changes in patterns and how it appears to model a sinusoidal function.
Okay. Thank you, Jolie. You are the brave soul who was so compelled to share your thought. So you are that person. We are going to move on to the next data source. Are we cool so far? Yes, right. Now, oh, I forgot. So for your information, we're talking about how the data science relates to your teaching. These are mathematical practices and these are mathematical concepts. And then here are the NGSS practices, cross-cutting concepts and core ideas. And I assume that your comments are related to how to teach math and science and computer science and data science. So we are going to move on to the next data science, which is a different way of showing. And I assume that, expect that all of you are going to have sobering experience of the data, but also be amazed by the power of the data. Here is a cumulative confirmed COVID-19 death per million people from, and I will show you where I got that representation. And here's our Walden data. And I actually have, oh, that's good. Coronavirus pandemic. So this is a bit like a Jeopardy screen. Actually, the color is even dark blue. Jeopardy screen, and the contestant says, click that screen, and I'm going to do the category of death. Now multiple, and I'm going to click death. So COVID-19 death. And here is, okay, I see chart and map, chart. So we have a daily new confirmed, oh, chart and map. You'll be surprised that it even provides the Excel sheet. Then I'm going to go to county by county. Here is the death and confirm the death. It's here this time, not daily new confirmed per million. And I'm going to see the chart. It just is slow. Here is a daily confirmed death per million. Here is that. And here is a cumulative per million. And I am looking for the one that I just showed you. So here is a cumulative confirmed death per million. And I am going to go to chart. There we go. So just follow me because you are going to spend 4 minutes to do it. Add country, India. Okay, I'm going to the United States and Canada and Germany and France. And all you have to do is, and there are many other countries, you click it, and this is what the data representation shows you. United States and Canada. Now, why is it important when you think about the per million, not the population per nation? Because the United States has 330 million people and Canada has maybe half. But this is a per million. So you can see United States is about the 2,200 per million and Canada is about 750. And it came out to be about the 4 times when we did the math. So this is what we are going to do for 4 minutes again. Peter, do we want to do the 3 to save the time? I'm very open. So go to the world in data, death, you can click. Consider how you could use the data for your teaching, enter your thoughts in the data box, and then share your thought. So you will have 3 minutes to click that, and then go to death and explore different ways of logarithm, linear, per million, no per million, the population for 3 minutes and think about your teaching. Mike, if you are there, this time you are going to be the brave soul who is so compelled to make a comment. So please pick one chat from science and share that on behalf of the person who shared the chat. Mike, are you ready?
I am looking in the chats. Our science folks are being shy. Here's an interesting observation, distinguishing natural death versus COVID-19 deaths and comorbidity with other diseases will be important.
Comorbidity, okay. Thank you so much for your participation. And Todd, you take it from here.
Okay,
thank you.
I am only interrupting because Kelly Steiner just she put in high income and low income and found it interesting. The high income has higher death rates, would lead to interesting questions.
We are getting into justice and disproportionately affecting minoritized groups by income and race and all that. So
I remember early on, we were looking at the world in data and there was someone who wanted to explore. There were a few countries who thought about trying to go toward herd immunity. And so they were trying to look at those countries and see what they would see early. So that was also very interesting. So thank you for letting me be here as well. I'm really excited. I'm honored to be able to present with Oki, and I appreciate Peter and everyone for inviting us. I want to shout out to Wanda, my BFF, Wanda Bryant from Michigan. I think I saw her, and then I think it's the Gail Jones I know, who I really also appreciate. So there's probably others. The next data set we wanted to share with you that we've included in some of the Daily Do work that we've done is, oh, it's not working. This one. So we just want to let you have a look at this for a minute. This is the comparisons between white, non-Hispanic populations in the US and American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian non-Hispanic, Black, African American, non-Hispanic, and Hispanic and Latino. And you can have a look at that. I'll highlight, oops, here, just deaths, but you can also look at cases and hospitalizations. You can see here the CDC guidance for how to slow the spread. And then I'll zoom you into this fine print, which we thought was interesting, helpful. And I'll just read it. Race and ethnicity are risk markers for other underlying conditions that affect health, including socioeconomic status, access to healthcare, and exposure to the virus related to occupations among frontline, essential, and critical infrastructure workers. So we're going to go to the next slide, and we're going to ask you to, here's the same slide that was previous, but now you can have access to it by clicking. It should be in, we should be able to put it in the link. And you can look at that data and then, like you did before with the world in data and the Johns Hopkins, interpret the data, consider how you could use it in your teaching, and then just enter your thoughts about your interpretation of the data or how you could use it in teaching. And so we'll give you, I think we'll do 3 minutes like we did last time to just stay on track. I think Peter's going to keep timing us, I hope.
Well. And again, I want to encourage our participants. This is a really active chat right now. So if you don't have your chat window open, please do. And please do not be shy. We'd love to hear your thoughts and what you're finding.
I'll quickly just share this and then Mike can add. I saw a couple of people who were talking about the importance of students seeing data and then also talking about their own thoughts and questions and analysis, but also a potential discussion of solutions.
Yeah, there was something in there about letting the kids notice and letting their questions emerge as a way to start the conversations. Spoken like a true science educator.
That's so funny that you say that, Mike. I was thinking that the what do you notice, what do you wonder is a common phrase we use in math. So I was thinking it was a math person. What is awesome is that they are a STEM person. And yay, Mary is a math person.
I'm sorry, Mary.
All right, we're going to keep going before Mike gets us all in trouble. The next thing we thought about in our the framework we were working on is how computer science or computer models might also play a role when students are reasoning about pressing societal issues. And so one computer model that we recognized early, I think this came about, let me see, this is, I don't know why. December 29th, the Washington Post published this simulation, pretty simple simulation. And it was later translated 13 languages, the most viewed story in the history of the Post, which started in the late 1800s. So it's computer science and computer models are really catching hold and becoming a resource for people, for citizens. So in this particular model, or in the computer models, like data science, where these things like Jolie and Mike mentioned, data science is for positioning students to make sense of the data that they're seeing as an event that happens in the world. They get access to the data and they get to make informed decisions from that data. We saw computer models, or see computer models, as these resources that students can use to begin to understand potentially the mechanistic accounts of how the data that they're seeing might actually come about, and then also as a like sandbox that they could use for some social design, to try some things out and then to look and see what the outcomes were and try other things out and see if the outcomes are different or potentially better or worse. And so I want to walk you through this because it's really valuable. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go back and read it after, but for the sake of time, I'll just take you through it. And then I'm going to ask you to give us some of your comments in the chat. So this was the why outbreaks like coronavirus spread exponentially and how to flatten the curve. And so what it did was it took us through this imaginary virus to give us an idea about, it's called stimulitis, talked about what happens when a person gets sick and how it begins to spread. So you can see what happens there. Then it talked about what happens when, once a person gets it, they recover, and then there's a level of immunity. So you can see that. Purple is immunity, or a level of immunity. So that gets us started. Then they go down here and they think about what would happen over time if unmitigated the virus spread. You can see the population quickly all becomes infected. There's a really steep curve of infection, and then there's some immunity. But if you think about hospitalizations, hospitals being overrun and out of capacity, this quickly could limit what hospitals and care facilities could do. If you go down here, this could be like Hubei province, I'm probably saying that wrong, where they tried to do forced quarantine, but it just wasn't possible. And so as any travelers got out of there without any other measures, the virus spreads. So more measures are needed than just trying to force quarantine the original, or the what is its own, I not coming up the word. And then down here, they looked at like what would happen then if we did a little bit of social distancing. So moderate social distancing. And so in this, you can see people are moving, but not as many people are moving. And then Oki and I thought about like, who are those people that are moving? Is it a representation of the population, or is it not as representative of the population, or some populations more represented in the movers than others? And here, they did some more extreme, sorry, I should go to it, extreme isolation, so less people are moving. And you can see the steepness of the curve isn't there. And it might be that hospitals could attend to these cases, and then immunity grows alongside that.
The chat box is alive.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
People being very positive about this simulation.
Yeah.
So many people have different ideas of what they would use in the classroom and how they'd be able to put in questions, have students stimulated questions. This is a unbelievable opportunity to be able to see what happens without actually being in the middle of that kind of a infectious environment.
Yeah, I'll ask you, Peter. Do we have until 8:10? Because there's more I'd love to share, but if
No,
whatever.
we're in great shape as far as time goes, Todd.
Okay, all right. I'm going to keep going. If there are a few comments that someone wants to share from the chat, you can definitely do that.
This is Jolie, and I definitely want to focus on the fact that math and science people have so much in common. One of the things I'm loving and seeing in the chat box, but is just a little funny, is like, Peter's like, oh, this is a cross-cutting concept. And then someone else is like, that's called rates of change in mathematics. And, which is a big idea. And so I'm just thinking about, as we're having these conversations and sharing these, I am thinking about the opportunities to have math and science teachers have more conversations. Someone in the chat box mentioned how important math is, but if it's taught traditionally, that it can be painful, and then students don't see the connections and context. And I completely agree. And I'm sure that goes both ways, but the chat box is alive for sure. And I just wanted to share that it just feels like a great, great conversation to be connecting the math and science that's happening in here.
So I'll keep going. So then we shift our framework into like really making sure, like the thing we noticed about the Washington Post simulation is it was amazing and timely in late December. But what it didn't do, and if you go back and read it, what it didn't do is maybe attend to equity and justice. So if you take a colorblind approach, which we don't want to do, then you think, well, all we really need to do is follow the CDC's guidance. But then we realized over time that wasn't what was happening. That wasn't what was happening, and it wasn't possible. And so we, as you saw in the CDC data, the last data science piece that I shared with you, there was disproportionate impact, and it was 3 to 4 times higher in terms of cases and deaths for ethnic and minority groups. And so we try to look at, or have students look at with us, some of these graphs. This graph, which looks at income gap between Black and white households, you can see it's about half. We look at this graph, which looks at white men not working versus Black men not working, and it doesn't look as bad maybe in 1950, but if you get to 2013, 2014, it's about half. So the incarceration, the out of labor connected to lack of resources is there as well. And so we ask you to think with these two graphs and try to answer these two questions in that alive chat box with us for a few minutes. And maybe, Peter, we could just do a couple minutes this time.
Okay.
Todd, would you mind going back to the first one? That one, thanks.
I'll just throw out one that I see. I see Will or Tad's. I love this, the tie to history. So what, when looking at one of the graphs, what helped incomes from both groups in 1995 to 2000, and what caused the drop from 2000 to 2005, and why was the drop not the same for both groups? So having students ask those kinds of questions, carefully interrogate the data, but also our society. I'm going to keep moving because we want to give you some time to work in some breakout rooms with your peers to think about how you might apply our framework. But I'll just, in summary, so we tried to look at or try to think with data science, justice-centered data science. So looking at data, looking at comparisons of cases for COVID with different ethnic and racial groups. We used Johns Hopkins, we used Our World in Data, we used the CDC guidance. And then we also had, what's happening?
Okay, so we are motivated by the Washington Post article about the simulation models. And this time here, working with the Starlogo Nova at MIT, students are putting all the data into the computational models to decide the computational models for social distancing. So as the students are doing the social distancing, we are operating two variables. One is crowded housing, and the second is a frontline work, essential workers. And students can see the CDC guidelines of stay 6 feet apart. It may not be possible if you are living in a crowded housing of multiple people. Stay at home or keep social distancing may not be possible if you are essential workers who have to go to work compared to other people who stay at home and all that. So it becomes an equity and justice issue. And based on the computational models, we are asking students to design solutions to promote the justice in society. Not only what individuals can do, but what society can do or should do.
And I would say like this model was built by our colleagues at MIT as part of a grant proposal we're working on. And this allowed students, unlike the Washington Post, this allows students to use this block coding to go in and try some different variables and try some different ideas to see if they can design some solutions that might that might create some of the more just outcomes that we're looking for. So our instructional framework, I think we just shared that, centers on justice and designing solutions, thinks about social science for social transformation, or I'll say STEM for social transformation. We have for you, and we're making great time, so give me a little bit of time to walk you through our handout here. We want to put you in breakout rooms, give you a chance to think about the things that we've shared, but also to collaborate with others who may be here and you have just put you together so that you can think together about how you might take this or something similar to this back to your classroom. So I'll click on this. We can put this in the chat. Everybody can access it. We want you to discuss it. Oh, that didn't work. We want you to discuss it. We don't expect with the time you're going to be given about 8 minutes. We don't expect you to be able to go in and answer it by typing out answers. But here you'll look at these are just reminders. So we want you to think about our framework. Number one, data science from Johns Hopkins, the infographics for counties. And then the black text is a reminder of what we shared, and the red questions are what we want you to think about as an application for potentially your classroom. The second part is computer science using Washington Post. That's what we did. And then you can think about what you might do in your math or science classroom or computer science. Here's the justice-centered graphs, and that's what we did, and the red is for you to think about. So we just want you to look at the red questions, think about what we did, talk in your groups, and when we come back we're going to go into breakout rooms now. Peter or Joni's going to help us figure out how to do that, and we'll come back around 8:18, and then we'll have maybe one or two groups just share one general idea that you heard around one or multiple of these parts of our framework.
Thank you, Todd. I'm going to ask the participants before we go to breakout, go to the chat box. I put the link to Todd's handout in there, so you can click on that before you go to breakout. That way you have it. Once you go into breakout, we lose the screen right now. So please grab that first, and then probably in 10 seconds, we can go into breakout. I'm counting down. There we go.
I'm going to ask if there's anyone who'd be brave enough to share just any ideas that you heard, or an idea that you heard that was compelling in your group that you wouldn't have thought of if you didn't get a chance to share. So I'll stop talking and see if anybody wants to share. I will say in the group I was at, I need to sign up for Tad's class, a math class. I appreciated he was interrogating the Washington Post graph. He was asking, is that, averages, or what would it look like if it wasn't averages, if it were another statistic? So we'll go on. The last thing we wanted to share with you, I don't think I'm sharing. Oh, it's not. It's just the daily do's we started with. So we created a storyline, a sequence of or playlist of daily do's that try to take advantage of some of the things we've shown you. So we've embedded it in this for teachers to use in science classrooms. And with that, I'm back to Peter.
I've got so many things I want to share, but I would really love to hear from Mike and Jolie, moderators, to see what they took away from these conversations. Jolie, do you want to lead off?
Of course, I would love to, Peter. I'm so busy typing in the chat box though. And I'm actually going to ask you, because apparently I should not be multitasking. In fact, if we don't mind, if I can toss it to Mike, or else have you repeat the question, as I know we are doing this. And I'm just going to also just very quickly share that in my group, Samantha was sharing about the data talks that she got from YouTube, and she has just put the link in again as well. If someone would like to.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, we're just interested in hearing through the course of this, as a representative at ASSM and mathematics, Jolie, and Mike as a representative from Council of State Science Supervisors, some of your thoughts of what you saw, not only in the presentation, but from the chat box. I know that it has energized you both, but were there any aha moments you'd like to share?
One of the things that really kind of jumped off the chat was there's a rich opportunity for kids when the math teachers and the science teachers would have an opportunity to sit down and figure out something that the kids can grasp onto, some event, some problem that's got rich data around it, and figure out how to help the kids develop the understandings of the math and science in a real context. But sometimes the systems don't allow us to do that very well. Our schedules are offset for duties and things. So it'd be interesting to figure out what is, as people that live in the policy world, and bridge the implementation world, how we could nudge things so that math and science people could talk more.
Thank you, Mike. Jolie, any other ideas you want to come in?
Yeah, and I think I already alluded to this, but I'm just going to say that one of the things that I really loved was that there really are so many strong connections between math and science. And as the STEM coordinator, I was the former STEM coordinator for the Utah State Office of Education. And when I think about what are the mathematics teaching practices, what do we talk about when we are talking about implementing high quality tasks, which includes things like students making conjectures and persevering in problem solving, or we're having students who are making sense of the world around them and using this data. It's like, and then we also have the same thing going on in science, generating ways to bridge those two disciplines, and have more opportunities to make connections and leverage that work feels really powerful to me and from this conversation. And I also just want to say, I love, love, love. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Todd and Oki, for having really meaningful data context and great conversations to think about how we can really make both math and science come alive, but also for students to be the ones who are thinking about issues and it not coming from teachers. I think that's one of the things that's so important, is that it's not our role as educators to put our opinions out, but it can very much be our role to talk about what is the difference between biased and unbiased data, and for students to analyze data, collect, compare, and then come up with potential solutions. And someone, I think it was Chris Coker, who said this earlier, like, our students have amazing ideas, and listening to them and having that come out, I think is what we all want to strive to have, and have our students feel empowered.
Thank you, Jolie. I want to go back in the chat box. And by the way, if you're having trouble to save the chat box, make sure that you go to if you go down to where you're going to post to see the 3 dots, you should be able to just use those 3 dots to save the chat box, because the chat box is very rich. But Padu put in a quote that I'm going to be stealing and giving him credit for. It says, it's about moving students from just being consumers of education to being producers of information. That really kind of summarizes what we're trying to do and what this data can do with that. So thank you for that quote, Padu. But Mike and Jolie, thank you so much for your comments. At this time, I want to turn it over to one of the people that made this possible. Vince O'Connell, over to you.
Peter, let me make sure I'm on off mute. Thank you very much on behalf of TI. We're excited to be able to come alongside this evening and really throughout the fall season to listen in. I can't thank Todd and Oki enough for really giving us a great discussion, just set of topics, and there's so much rich discussion there. And you know, I've learned by listening on events like this, it's the words that I write down. And Jolie just mentioned biased and unbiased and exploration. And in our little group, Tiffany was talking about taking the CVS and the raw data files. And that's, again, something that can be done and allows students to explore with it. So again, it's just great for us to be able to support a professional learning opportunity like this. And we will always come alongside, and just excited to be a part of this. So Peter, back over to you. We look forward to seeing everybody soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vince, and I appreciate your comments. But more importantly, I just want to thank not only Mike and Jolie did a great job moderating, and I've actually, contributing to this through their work. Really appreciate you being here tonight, Mike and Jolie, but especially to Oki Lee and Todd Campbell. You have given us, as people have said over again, authentic data that could be used in a multitude of ways and have educators think innovatively and say, how can students use this, and allow the students to generate their questions. I will ask Joni to put the link in the chat box, because we really would like to be able to have you be able to look at past and future STEM exchanges, and that link that's there that will be able to come forward that Joni just put in will be a great way of coming in to seeing what we've done in the past. And as we bring in some new sessions coming up in February, keep an eye out for the slide deck, for the recording, for the opportunity to revisit this, to share with your colleagues, take out the salient points, be able to do what you need to do with that. And more importantly, the way that we can help improve these sessions to make them more pertinent to what you do every day in the classroom is for you to fill out a survey and tell us what we did well, tell us what we could do better. And so we really appreciate you having the opportunity to go into that survey and to be able to give us some feedback. And the last thing I want to be able to do is just say thank you all, because it is all about you. I mean, you are all the heroes of education. We have the opportunity to work together, but you folks are the ones that are in the classroom every day. You make a difference every day. And it really is an honor for all of us to be able to present this. But as you recall what I said in the beginning, the STEM Exchange, it's a place where we come together to share, to exchange, and to learn. And believe me, this session has been all that. So with that, I wish you all a great evening. Thank you all for your participation. And hopefully we'll see you in February for the next STEM Exchange. Bye-bye now.